While the COVID-19 pandemic affects all countries in the world and all groups in those countries in the world, it hits refugees particularly hard. Refugees often live in camps with a very high density where the sanitary conditions are bad. Refugees often don't have access to basic health services and they are therefore particularly vulnerable. This is true in the refugee camps on the Greek islands. This is true in refugee camps in Turkey or in Iran. It's true throughout the world, and it requires that our countries see this emergency situation and also provide the necessary help today. The report makes it very clear that the European Union cannot on its own solve irregular migration across the Mediterranean Sea. It cannot on its own solve the problematic situation in many of the host countries and of the transit countries. What is needed is cooperation with those countries, and to make that happen, the EU needs to pay attention to the right incentives so that the source and the transit countries have interests in shaping appropriate policies together with the European Union. Many of the poor sending countries from Africa and also the transit countries depend a lot on remittances that migrants send home from Europe. Those remittances are important for the general economy, they're important for government finances, they're important to make lives successful and possible in many small communities in Africa. Therefore, it is important that the European policymakers understand this. If a country in Africa helps the EU curbing irregular migration flows, very quickly this country runs into legitimacy issues with its own population, and it hits very hard financial constraints. The EU, therefore, needs to take those interests of those African countries on board if it is to formulate a sensible policy approach to irregular migration. Any successful policy to reduce the irregular flows of refugees and other migrants must come with more possibilities for legal and regular migration. This means that the EU opens ways for Africans, for example, to come to Europe for work purposes. The EU must also alleviate certain visa restrictions. This makes sure that the governments in Africa have incentives to cooperate. It makes sure that they don't have heavy financial losses out of this policy, and it anchors the important legitimacy for these policies in the poor sending and transit countries.